1 Thessalonians chapter 5 verses 14 through 15 says, "And we urge you, warn those who are idle, encourage the timid, help the weak, be patient with everyone. Make sure that nobody pays back wrong for wrong, but always be kind to each other and to everyone else." Suddenly the birds were darting all around me. They flew at me and barely missed my head as I ducked away from them. Once again, my friend, Jesus, brought me to the place I had grown to dread. Hell itself. We were walking up a gray, very rocky mountain in the spirit realm when the demon-like birds came at me. Instinctively, I knew they were trying to sting me like a bee would and inject venom into my arms. Overtaken by fear, my heart pounding rapidly within my chest, I ran and hid in the folds of Jesus' garment. Peering out from my place of safety, I cried out to Jesus and asked him what these creatures were. "Come, do not let them influence you or frighten you," he responded quite calmly. "I have much to show you. Your mind needs to be free of all fear so that you can hear me clearly." Instantly, my peace was restored. The demon birds continued to swoop down at me, but Jesus was keeping me safe. Encouraging me, he said, "As long as you stay close to me, they can't touch you." We walked over to the top of a cliff. Even though we were walking on a rather high elevation, it was dismal and murky here. Unrelenting, demon-like birds continued flying in all directions about us as we approached the top of the cliff. The Lord bent down and whispered in my ear, "Don't be afraid. Nothing can hurt you or harm you in this place, because I cover you. Look through me, as I've taught you in the past, and you will not be troubled by what you see." Once again, as I concentrated on Jesus beside me, the panic left and a great feeling of love and well-being engulfed me. Through Jesus, I could see prisoners chained together, clothed in dirty rags, filled with sadness, walking down the side of the cliff we were overlooking. Grotesque creatures snarled and gnashed their teeth at them and frequently whipped the pitiful prisoners as they forced them to advance down the steep incline toward the bottom of the pit. They knew there was no chance of escape. A quiet resignation filled each prisoner. What could they have done to cause such cruel and unjust treatment? Completely captivated by this grisly scene, Jesus reminded me to look at it through him. These poor tragic figures had no shoes on their feet, and they were stumbling over sharp, jagged rocks. It appeared that they were being made to walk down the steepest, roughest part of the hill. The more terrified and hurt they were, the more delighted their cruel captors. As soon as someone lost their balance and fell into the person ahead of them, whom they were chained to, a terrible scene evolved. Cursing and vile screams poured out of the mouth of the person who was pushed and bumped into. There was no mercy or help extended here in this awful place. Rage and anger poured out of the victims along with a terrible hopelessness. Viciously pulling the chain that attached them to the fallen prisoner, the angered soul inflicted so much pain on their collapsed comrade, it caused them to bleed and cry out in agony. This brutal response so delighted the demon guards that they joined in on the attack and whipped the stumbling victim. Everyone in this hellish chain gang screamed at him until he got up on his blood-drenched feet. Then a dreadful calm ensued as they continued their trudge down the bleak, rocky mountain. Peering into the murky darkness, I watched in amazement as the very one who had responded so viciously to his fallen comrade came crashing down onto the stony ground. Everyone, including the soul he had so brutally victimized, began yelling and pulling on his chains until he rose back into a standing position. No one helped anyone else here. They just walked down this crooked, winding path that appeared to have no end in sight. On and on they went, aimlessly repeating the same riot-like scenario over and over. Fueled by the rage and anger inflicted on them by the whips of the zealous demon guards, they were continuously pushing, yelling, screaming, and pulling one another in a state of hopeless despair. Accustomed to the darkness, my eyes beheld the enormity of the suffering this mountain held for its many captives. I saw numerous groups of chained prisoners walking barefoot in hopeless misery on their endless journey through through a maze of different paths that were scattered up and down its sides. Instinctively, I knew many of these prisoners had been walking throughout the walls of this descending pit for many years, even centuries. What could these souls have done that would cause them to be imprisoned in this torturous place? I asked the Lord once again. Using the story in Scripture of the Good Samaritan as an example, he answered me somberly, "Remember the demonic birds that flew so close to you and tried to inject you with their venom, much like a bee stings its victim. These demon birds fly all over the earth, seeking out souls to imprison in this pit of despair and endless futility. Hate is what they try to inject in their victims, the very same hatred you saw the prisoners display towards one another. Impatience and intolerance are the open doors that allow these birds to land on people and fill them with venomous hatred. Impatience with weakness, intolerance for those who stumble and fall, gives them easy access. As you drew close to me, you were safe from their attacks. The love that is found only in my heart has patience and tolerance for your falling fellow man or woman. Weakness in one's brother or sister can engender resentment so hostile it relishes the pain the fallen one is enduring. In my word, I warn my children not to rejoice when they see someone suffer for their sins. This is why. It is the character of Satan and his demons to rejoice over the demise of another, apparently weaker one. That is not my heart, nor my character, to rejoice over a fallen one's pain. I am he that comes and lifts up the oppressed. In the story of the Good Samaritan, I demonstrated the love and care I show for all who have fallen by the side of the road in their life. It is my tender heart and helping hand that reaches out and lifts the disgraced, even if their own actions cause their demise. I am merciful and patient, always showing compassion and tolerance for the weak and the lowly ones. Do not imitate the actions of those who ridicule the weak or criticize or condemn them, but rather be like me. Follow in my footsteps, and you will avoid the pitfalls that lead to this place of intolerance. When you see or hear of a situation where someone has committed a great crime, come to me, just as you came to me to avoid the demonic birds. Come to me so that you will see that person through me. I will show you how I see them and allow you to feel my compassion and love for them. The Good Samaritan gave careful instruction and the money needed to the caretaker, and he appointed to nurse and fallen victim back to health. It is through me that you will find the resources and the love that you need to help the wounded amongst you. I am the source. If you don't come to me and draw from my heart, you will fall victim to the spirit of intolerance. Impatience with the weakness of others will fuel your intolerance and bring about your demise if you don't draw close to me. Independence from me is not the way to the path of life. Leaving the spirit realm and returning to the peaceful atmosphere of my home, I began to ponder what I had just seen. The world around me was filled with intolerance, wars and hatred of different kinds of people, daily dose of murders and robberies on the news, politicians condemning one another, and on and on. I saw how many times I had embraced an attitude of intolerance and impatience. After my visit to the place of intolerance in hell, I was determined that I would see the headlines in the news from a different perspective. Anger would not so easily find a resting place in my heart when I heard terrible stories of injustice. Over and over, with His help, I would bring the events that concerned me to Jesus. No longer was I just praying for those who had awful things done to them. Now I would pray for the perpetrators too. My thoughts began to focus on the times I had suffered personally from injustices and been wounded by those close to me. Now I could see each one through Jesus' eyes and could picture myself lending them a hand to stand by my prayers and thoughtful deeds. From now on, I was placing a guard around my heart like Jesus taught me. Intolerance and resentment would no longer creep up on me unawares. Resolute and determined, I left my prayer room, promising myself that I would never forget the lessons I had learned from my journey into hell this day. Proverbs chapter 12 verse 16 says, "A fool shows his annoyance at once, but a prudent man overlooks an insult."